Happy Groundhog's Day, everyone. Ilan, do you think the groundhog will see its shadow today? Or we're going to get an early spring? Or we're going to have to wait another 6 weeks?
I am hoping that he sees his shadow. I'm sick and tired of this winter. I need some nice weather. Mr. Groundhog, for all of us, please see your shadow.
Warrington Willie, please see your shadow. I hope, is it still Warrington Willie? Or is he dead? Do we have like a new person in Ontario?
Listen, honestly, I don't know so much about the Groundhogs of Ontario. I wish I could be of more of assistance, but I can talk more about basketball than Groundhogs, that's for sure.
If this groundhog doesn't give us the results that we want, he might get traded. Kind of similar to what Bradley Beal's hoping right now.
Yeah, Bradley Beal is looking around his roster and is just disappointed. He is upset. He was visibly upset on the bench after getting blown out. His girlfriend is now tweeting for him to get traded. Everyone wants him out of there. The family, the friends. He is done. The whole Westbrook experiment has not turned out well. Westbrook has been scoring as much as he's been shooting. It's really been a whole mess of a season, and I really can't blame him. He, as individually, has been playing fantastic, but his team just cannot get any wins. They can't get a stop. It's just so sad to watch.
Yeah, now we're both on the free Bradley Beal bandwagon. On our Twitter page, we've posted free Bradley Beal. We've retweeted his wife's tweet to get him out of DC. We want him in a better situation, and a winning situation too, nonetheless. But yeah, not to mention Beal's disappointed. Both of us were also disappointed. We had high praise for Washington coming into this season, as we mentioned in episode 1, and all the other episodes leading up to today. But it's like we said, it's trouble in the capital.
Listen, get Bradley Beal to Denver. That's what I want to see. He'd be perfect alongside Jamal Murray in the backcourt, a perfect three-headed monster with Jokic as well. I want Bradley Beal to Denver. I'm going to talk it into existence. I originally said that Scott Brooks will be on the hot seat, and we've heard rumors that's true. Maybe I can talk Bradley Beal to Denver and into existence as well. I want him to Denver. Is there a location that you would want him to go to?
It's out of DC. That's first of all. I wanted to see him go to Golden State because when Klay Thompson coming back, you have no idea how he's going to be when he comes back. Tearing your Achilles, that's one of the worst injuries in sports. Kevin Durant's defying all odds this year, but who knows what Klay's going to come back to. So I think if we could kind of replace Klay with Bradley Beal, I feel like that would be a perfect situation for him in Golden State.
Yeah, I definitely back that. If Klay can't get healthy, he still actually can make a different career for himself as a color commentator. Did you see him commentating the Pistons-Warriors game?
He's good, bro. He's entertaining. Honestly, give him the 5-year max on NBA on TNT. Maybe he won't talk shit to all the players when he's interviewing them.
Yeah, he wanted all the smoke. He's clearly got that competitive spirits within him, and he just needed some way to let that out. I think commentating on games was the way to do it. So good for Klay Thompson. I hope that we can see more of this. I hope this can become a recurring thing. Maybe have it every Saturday night or all the Saturday games. He'll do something like that. I think the Warriors are innovative enough that they can try to work something out. I think that all the fans definitely want that. He was fantastic.
And he was funny. Moving along with trade rumors, New Orleans Pelicans also have themselves surrounded by a bunch of trade rumors, trying to trade the recently acquired Eric Bledsoe from the Jrue Holiday trade, trying to move J.J. Redick, who they signed last year, and trying to move Lonzo Ball, who they acquired last year in the Anthony Davis trade. There was rumors with the Warriors trying to trade Kelly Oubre to the Pelicans, but now we're also learning today that the Pelicans have also not finalized, but they've narrowed down the options for where they want to trade J.J. Redick, to either to Brooklyn, to Philly, or Boston. Ilan, what are your thoughts on these trade rumors surrounding New Orleans?
I think that it makes sense. I think that they're sort of taking a step back and realizing that they're not title contenders yet. I think David Griffin and the front office in New Orleans tried to speed up the process, and it just failed. They ended up getting this weird roster that didn't really make a lot of sense. J.J. Redick and Bledsoe both don't really fit alongside Zion, and presumably you'll be building around Zion and Ingram. So it makes sense that to get rid of those guys who can't really shoot so well. Lonzo Ball hasn't been what people were hoping he'd be coming into the draft. And I think people were expecting him to be a lot more like LaMelo. And, maybe they end up trying to trade him to Charlotte to unite the Ball brothers, get LeVar Ball's dream come true. But I think that It makes a lot of sense. Those players, JJ Redick and Bledsoe, are not on the timeline for the Pelicans, and Lonzo just hasn't really fitted how we were all expecting him to fit. He didn't really pan out as everyone was hoping. I think that a great fit for JJ Redick would be actually his old team, the Philadelphia 76ers. They are a team that, they're dominating in the East, and we see oftentimes contenders will try to make a midseason trader move, a smaller move, just to really finalize that roster. They didn't go for James Harden. They liked what they had with Ben Simmons and Embiid. And I think that JJ Redick, a guy who knows the team and knows the players and also can provide some extra shooting, would be a great fit alongside Embiid, alongside Simmons, whether he's coming off the bench or he's going into a ultra shooting lineup of Seth Curry, Danny Green, JJ Redick, Embiid, and Simmons. I think that for them it makes the most sense. I would like to see him go to Philly. What about you?
I would also like to see him go to Philly. Philly didn't have to make a trade for him. All you have to do is just re-sign him after the 2018-2019 season. But if we do trade him to Philly, I want Tyrese Maxey in return, because I think he fits the timeline better than JJ Redick. JJ Redick's towards the end of his career is still productive, but he just doesn't, as you mentioned, doesn't fit where Zion and Brandon Ingram are in with this kind of Pelicans rebuild. I think Tyrese Maxey, young guy, rookie, you kind of help him build, help this team rebuild, and he gets used to the system in New Orleans. I think that could be that's a hell of a trade piece in return for JJ Redick.
Yeah, I don't know if Philly does that. There were reports that Tyrese Maxey was that one piece that Philly didn't want to include in the James Harden trade. And if you're not going to include Tyrese Maxey for James Harden, I don't know if you're going to include him for JJ Redick. No knocking on Redick, but James Harden.
Hey, just like I want to talk it into existence. Give me Tyrese Maxey for JJ Redick. Let's see the 2022 New Orleans Pelicans as your NBA champs.
Philly did, I think, include Matisse Thybulle in the Ben Simmons for James Harden trade. And I think it might make a little bit more sense, or they might be more willing to do Thybulle and maybe some picks or some other players for JJ Redick. I can't see them including Tyrese Maxey if they wouldn't even include him for James Harden. And so I think that there is a trade to be done there. They do have pieces that can be traded. They have some draft picks, unlike Brooklyn, who was included in those trade rumors as well. They don't really have many assets to include there. Philly makes the most sense for him. They are a team that can use him and also can trade for him. So I think that JJ Redick to Philly makes the most sense. I'd like to see it happen. Just to continue, though, talking about the Nets seem to want everyone. They seem to literally want a little bit of everything. They recently signed Iman Shumpert to finalize that 14-man roster, but there's now rumors that Andre Drummond will get bought out by the Cavs, and he's going to sign with the Nets. There's rumors that JJ Redick will get traded there. There's rumors that they want to trade for Kevin Love. They seem to want anyone who's available, anyone and everyone. What can you make of this?
I think this is just a classic move by contenders. As the season goes on, there's all these veteran pieces that are free agents that that kind of help the team fill out any deficiencies that they have in the roster. So I think signing Iman Shumpert, it makes sense. Gives them a bit more depth, especially when they lost Karis LeVert and Jared Allen in the James Harden trade. So I think this is very helpful, and I wouldn't be surprised if they sign some other veteran players down the line. Maybe a Jeremy Lin or some of the players playing in the G League showcase. Later on, I believe in February. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. We're waiting on the Andre Drummond buyout because I think this is pretty much guaranteed. They have the injury money from Spencer Dinwiddie to use to sign him. Trading for Kevin Love is a bit interesting, though. I don't know who they would possibly give up in return for Kevin Love. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was looking at the trade finder, and I think that if you base a trade around Spencer Dinwiddie and his contract, Joe Harris, and maybe some few other smaller contracts, minimum players, you could probably figure out some sort of trade. And they would have to wait, though, until a certain deadline because Joe Harris did re-sign with them, so they have to wait until I think sometime in February to be able to trade him. But for me, I don't get why the Cavs are going to buy out Andre Drummond. He's a extremely valuable center. He can do everything that any team needs him to do. He can rebound the ball. He can play some interior defense, block some shots, score in the paint. I don't get why they would just buy him out and basically, as a freebie, hand him to the Nets. And also, let's think about that the Cavs are pushing for a playoff spot. They might end up being the 7th seed or the 8th seed in the playoffs, and they might be facing the Brooklyn Nets. And for a team that doesn't have any rim protection and doesn't have any, person to stop big men in the paint and scoring in the paint, it seems weird that you can just literally gift wrap a player like Andre Drummond to the Nets when you might be facing him in the playoffs, and he might stop them and help the Nets exactly where the weakness is, which would just hurt the Cavs' chance at anything in the playoffs. The Nets have shown them they can't defend teams. The Cavs have already beaten the Nets. So I don't know why they would just gift wrap him when I'm sure other teams would trade for him. For me, I just think that I was just confused when I saw that the Cavs are just ready to buy him out. Even if they say, we want to trade him and get some sort of even a second round pick. A second round pick is more than nothing than, having to just pay off his contract and literally get nothing in return except for maybe just a quicker playoff exit. I was just very surprised.
Wait, is this another one of your hot takes? That if Brooklyn plays Cleveland in the playoffs, Cleveland will knock off the Nets? Is that one of your hot takes? Just want to confirm that. I just want to confirm that for the viewers.
I'm not saying the Cavs are going to beat the Nets in a playoff series, but I think that they can at least maybe steal a game or two. Maybe try to make it a little competitive. They've got some dogs there. They've got some players who are ready to play. I don't think that they're going to beat the Nets in a full playoff series, but I think that with Andre Drummond there, they have a chance of maybe stealing a game or two. That's all I'm trying to say here. And it's definitely something to, sell to your fans who've been hoping for anything, a little shred of glory ever since LeBron left them for a second time. And one more thing about the Nets.
Right track. They're just on the right track with Sussland. But I don't know. Maybe you give it another year to develop. I don't know. Because right now they're at the 7th seed. So they would have to play in that play-in tournament. No guarantees that you make it in. I think 7 is Cleveland, 8 is the Hornets, and 9, 10 is New York and Orlando. I would honestly be very, very scared to play New York in the playoffs right now. So who knows what direction Cleveland actually wants to go in for the rest of this year, if they actually want to make a playoff push, or if they're going to kind of like sit back a bit, just let their players develop, and then next year really go for a playoff push.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to get some playoff experience. Mm-hmm. I think the best way to teach your young players how to win games is to actually put them in an opportunity to win games and not to, just be scraping the bottom of the barrel every single season, then hoping something miraculously just turns on. I think that's what's happening this year, and I think they have to just ride that wave. For me, though, the Nets are sort of like this guy who won the lottery and it's now sort of just wants to buy everything and doesn't realize that there are still other finances involved, that there's taxes involved and all that stuff. I feel like they struck gold and they end up signing Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and ever since then, they've just wanted everything possible to them. I think the first sign of this was when they were trying to find a head coach, and they had one very, very credible solution as their interim head coach at the time, Jacques Vaughn, who they brought on as a assistant head coach. And then they end up getting Steve Nash, and they're like, oh no, we're still not done. Let's go and bring in Mike D'Antoni, and let's bring in Amari Stoudemire, and I think Ime Udoka is another guy who they brought in. So I think that they're just, all of a sudden when we try to get just a head coach, they were just trying to get every single name that was available to them, any big name, small name. And then again, they're trying to get James Harden's available. Let's trade for him. Oh, let's try trading for both Kevin. Let's try getting Kevin Love. Let's try getting Andre Drummond. JJ Redick's another name. Let's get him. And I think that they don't realize that that's not how NBA works. And unfortunately, the Cavs just might let them do that. They might just gift wrap Andre Drummond. I think that it's just a little bit worse for the competitiveness of the league. The league is insanely competitive right now. I've been enjoying this season so far, and I wouldn't like just another super team just to come in and dominate. And one other thing also, just while I'm ranting about the Nets, is that is that Kevin Durant left Golden State because he realized that he needed his own team, that no one was going to credit him with all the wins and all the titles in Golden State, and that even though he was trying to beat LeBron as get the title of the best player of all time, he would never be able to get that in Golden State being on another super team. And I think it made sense when he was left the team to go play just alongside one other superstar in Kyrie Irving, and then really try to show how good you are to lead a team. And all of a sudden they brought in James Harden. Now they want to bring in Andre Drummond, Kevin Love, get all these big names. And if they just have this overpowered team again with 4 All-Stars, 3 Hall of Famers, all in their primes, people might discredit his if he wins the title, discredit that again, and he might actually hurt his case of trying to prove to the league that he's the best player in the league by bringing in all these players. I don't think it's a secret that Kevin Durant has a big say in what's going on in that front office and that big say in what's going on in that team. I think that it was clear when they brought in Kyrie Irving that he wanted to play alongside Kyrie, when they literally gave DeAndre Jordan a nice contract because he's Kyrie and KD's friend. A lot of the moves that they're making is just to they're checking with Kevin Durant first, and so I don't get how this is going to help his legacy. Even if he wins some more titles, I think they might just be discredited again because they're going to have a team with 4 All-Stars or All-Star caliber players, 3 Hall of Fame players, all playing in their primes. I just don't see how it's going to help him.
Jeez, you're a tough critic. What happened to you today? Just completely shredding the Brooklyn Nets. I'm not going to let this slander go on for any more longer on this episode. I mean, I'm glad you got your rant out. I hope feeling a bit better.
I guess all this vents up tensions started back when the Raptors, DeRozan and Lowry lost to the Nets in a Game 7 of the first round. Paul Pierce blocked that game winner by Lowry. I guess that's where it all started.
Yeah, that was 7 years ago. Let it go a bit. But here, I have something that will cheer you up. This is a bit of good news for today. The NBA is hoping to put on an All-Star game, an in-person All-Star game. Not something virtual, but a real game. The host city would probably be Atlanta, and I'd assume that you would have fans in the arena, albeit how many we don't know, and how close could these fans actually sit? Because the All-Star Game's a pretty big celebrity. It's a pretty big celebrity sighting. So just what Ilan and I did, we both made our picks for the starting lineups in the East and West, and then Ilan looked after the rest of the Eastern Conference All-Stars, and I did the Western Conference All-Stars. Ilan, when you were making your team, what were you looking for?
I was just looking for the best of the best. It's the All-Star game. You want to get those All-Stars. There were some tough calls, and there's always players who are going to be snubbed. Bradley Beal feels like he's snubbed every single year. Dame had a good run where he was snubbed often. So it's hard to include everyone. There is only 12 spots. I think that the NBA should actually increase the roster spots for the All-Star game. A full roster now in the NBA, I think, is 14 guys or 15 guys. And so even if not all of them get so much playing time, just to give them that nomination, I think that they should try to include that, because there's guys every year who should be All-Stars and they just don't make the roster. It's a celebratory event. Why not celebrate the best of the best? So I really just tried to include the guys who I thought really deserved to be there. I didn't try taking their legacies or their passing to it. I really tried basing it just on this year. And it was tough, but I narrowed it down to the top 12.
And I think for both of our starters, I don't think there's really any... this year, the starters seem to be pretty much on lock. I don't think there's not going to be any surprise picks. Maybe our starters will differentiate between 1 or 2 players at most. But I think, if you're listening to this, I think you could probably agree that the players that we're about to mention, you probably would also put them in your starting lineup too for this year.
So let's run through it then, because I think that for both conferences, the front court players are pretty set. In each conference for the starters, there's 2 backcourt players and 3 front court players. Personally, I think that it's hard to argue any of the front court players. I found that the backcourt players, there's a little bit more debate there. So if we want, we can start in the Western Conference. You could start first. Let's hear your starting 5 for the West.
For the front court, I got LeBron, I have Jokic, I have Kawhi. On the backcourt, I have Steph and Dame.
Yeah, I really can't argue with that front court. I think that LeBron's in that MVP race. Jokic has been phenomenal, leading the league in assists this year as a center, which is unheard of. And then you got Kawhi, who, the Clippers have been, I think they're currently second in the West. They've been fantastic this year. I think they're the best three-point shooting team in the whole league. So I think that that's pretty undisputed. I actually have 2 different guards for you. Curry and Dame, they're for sure going to be on the team. For me, I had Luka Doncic as one of the backcourt spots. And the other one, this might come to surprise you, but I had Donovan Mitchell. And the Jazz are actually the number 1 seed in the West, not the Lakers, not the Clippers, but the Utah Jazz.
And they're riding a nice 11-game win streak at the time of this recording.
Exactly. A big part of that is because of Donovan Mitchell's stellar play. They started off the season, a little shaky, and they quickly got into the groove of things, and they quickly turned it on. A main part of that is Donovan Mitchell. So again, he doesn't have that big name like Curry, like Lillard, but this so far has been a fantastic year for him. And so I have Luka, who is averaging a near triple-double in his 3rd season, which is insane. And I have Donovan Mitchell as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also, just a side note, please give Dame All-Star starter. I don't want to have to hear another Dame Bella song about him getting snubbed or anything like that. I don't want to hear him perform at halftime. Just Just make him happy. He's balling out this year. Give him what he wants.
No, absolutely. What about the East though? Who are your starters for the East?
East for the front court, we got Kevin Durant, we got Joel Embiid, and we got Giannis Antetokounmpo. Do you have anything different?
I can't argue with that.
there's literally no. Who else would you put in that front court? Who else would have been on the brink?
I really the three of them are way above everyone else out of all the frontcourt players in the East. Embiid is having an MVP like season right now, and he's really in the him and LeBron are leading that MVP race right now in my opinion. So I think it was pretty clear he was going to be on it. Kevin Durant, even after coming back from an Achilles injury, put that story aside, he's still balling out, putting up insane numbers. His team is doing well, so I think it's hard to argue with him. And Giannis is the reigning two-time MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, and statistically, he's still the same. His free throw numbers might have fallen off a little bit, shooting I think around 56 or 58% from the free throw line, but he still is dominating the league, and his numbers are still there. His team is still doing well, so it's hard just to make any claim for any other player because those guys are clearly just one level above everyone else. But I think the big debate, though, is between the backcourt. Who did you have? Did you favor Bradley Beal and his, leading the league in scoring despite the Wizards not playing well? Are you giving the nod to Kyrie or Harden? Are you giving the nod to Jaylen Brown? There's a bunch of players you can mention here. Who did you have in these two spots?
Obviously, I'm on the Bradley Beal train, leading the league in points per game with 34.7 points. He deserves it. Come on. Yes, his team sucks. But he's in a very tough situation right now. He's balling out. He is what you would define as an all-star. I know 3-12 is not a great record. Yes, we all know that. But for what this guy has to go through, give him a starting spot in this year's all-star game. Give him a bonus and give him a trade. Ilan, do you have him as your backcourt?
I was really torn on this because on one hand, he is leading the league in scoring. He's averaging 35 points a game. But then again, who else is going to score on that team? They're last place in the whole league for a reason, and it's just hard to watch the team because they're so bad. But at the end of the day, he is playing at a starter level, at an all-star starter level. I did give him the nod. I was very torn apart between this, though. I was really going back and forth between him and Harden, but I end up saying awarding his individual performance because the all-star game is to honor those individual players, and you're not honoring a whole team. What about that other spot, though?
As much as we've kind of spoken downly upon Kyrie Irving, I gave him the other starting spot for the Eastern Conference. 27.7 points per game, 5.8 assists, 4.9 rebounds. He was playing well this year, and you can't deny that. Yes, he had the whole situation where we didn't know where he was for that past week, but Ilan, you got to give him credit where credit is due. He is playing well. I mean, he's helping out this Brooklyn team in any way that he can. What are your thoughts? Do you have him as your other backcourt or
not as a starter? No, the guy took off 2 weeks of playing basketball just to do nothing. Like he was going on city Zoom calls and whatnot. He might have been playing well when he's playing, but you can't forget the fact that he just decided not to show up to work for 2 weeks out of the season. Like I can't look past that when I'm trying to choose the two best players in the conference. Am I going to award someone who just decides to play when he wants to play, or am I going to award someone who comes in every day and makes an impact every single game? And for that reason alone, I had to give it to Jaylen Brown. This guy has been putting up crazy numbers. I think he's top 10 in scoring in the whole league. He's averaging around 27 points a game with shooting 44% from three, averaging 5.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, getting a steal and a half a game. He's been one of the main reasons that the Celtics have been doing so well, even though they've had injury problems with first Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum missed a few games for COVID. Now Marcus Smart's going to be out for 2 to 3 weeks. And one consistent person who's been there, one consistent presence has been Jaylen Brown. And for that reason alone, for a guy who's not taking 2 weeks off of basketball just to do whatever he wants, but a guy who's showing up day in and day out and putting up consistent numbers day in and day out, I gave it to Jaylen Brown.
I mean, if I knew coming into today's episode that you were just going to go on an absolute tirade against the Brooklyn Nets, I might have changed my pick. But I'm sticking with the Beal Irving backcourt, and that's what I'm hoping for. My vote has been sent in, and add another one to the vote column for Bradley Beal and Kyrie Irving.
Listen, I still have Kyrie making the All-Star team. I just can't give him that starting nod when other players have been more consistent and in my eyes also
More
just better,
present, more
more
present
present, more
too. Yeah.
consistent, and in my eyes just better. All around better, both on both sides of the court. So for me, I ended up giving the nod to Jaylen Brown. And as much as I do sound like I'm hating on Kyrie, he is on my actual roster. He is going to be on that All-Star team. So I just don't think he's a starter.
Will he show up though? That's the real question. Will he show up?
Yeah, he might just take a few days off, go to Zoom calls and whatnot. All right, so Ben, we've heard the starters now. Let's hear the reserves. You chose the West, I chose the East. Let's hear it.
For the reserves, for the backcourt, I have Luka and Donovan, the exact opposite that you have. I really don't think there's any debate there. They're both playing out of their minds right now. Luka continues to take a step up year after year. Donovan Mitchell playing well on Utah, getting shot on by Shaq the other week, but I still think he's proving it. He's proven him wrong. For the front court, I got Paul George. I was deciding between Paul George and Kawhi for the starters, but ultimately I went with Kawhi, so Paul George will get the other front court. My other one goes to Christian Wood. Maybe a bit of surprise, but he took a bigger role this year and he's performing, so I truly believe that he should be rewarded for that. And for the last spot, I was kind of debating between Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. I think both of them have really taken a step up from last year. It might be maybe a bit of a surprise. Maybe there's other players that you would think that I would pick, but it's either between one of those two. Zion's been healthy for most of the year. He's showing all the hype that we had last year for him. He's showing it this year. And Ingram too. These are both players that they have a greater role with their team and they're really showing out. So I would reward one of those two with the All-Star spot. Also just a bit of Pelicans bias there too, but nonetheless, they're playing well. And for the wild card spot, I'd give it to Anthony Davis and Karl Anthony Towns. I'm not sure if they will get voted in, but they have been playing well, just not as well as some of the other players that I've mentioned for this year's All-Star team.
So Ben, just to confirm with you, none of the Phoenix Suns, Chris Paul or Devin Booker, would make the team for you?
No, you got that. You got that correct. You heard that right. I think if one of them was going to get picked, I think it would be Devin Booker. I think he's most likely to get one. Just having a big role with that team. But for my predictions, they don't crack my lineup.
Listen, these are your predictions. In my opinion, I think that one of those guys deserve it more than one of those Pelicans guys. Anthony Davis can be that last front court player, and then one of those guys can take that wild card spot. So I would give it to them. The team has been better. I think they've been better in doing more for their teams. But listen, you can't fault them. One other guy I want to give a shout out to that, barring any injury, I think he would have made it, was CJ McCollum. He started off the season dominating the season, putting up around 27 points a game and really shooting lights out. Unfortunately, he had this injury. He was out for, I think, 4 to 6 weeks. And so I think that's definitely going to hurt his chances. I think that if he never got injured, I think he actually could have been a first-time All-Star this year.
I mean, like you mentioned before, it's tough to pick, 12 roster spots for an All-Star game when you have countless great players in each conference. It's difficult. Your people are all going to get left off. But that's just what it is. This isn't a participation award. Like just handing out, you get an All-Star spot, and you get an All-Star spot. You got to earn it. And if there's tons of other great players, then you got to fight for your spot.
Absolutely. I think you made some good choices. The one place where I would argue with you is a Suns player over the Pelicans player. But you had the West, I got the East.
I think we should let our Instagram decide. We'll post a story. Who do you think? Which players deserve an All-Star spot? Who do you think is going to get snubbed?
Absolutely.
Just follow us at LosersBallPod, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok.
Make sure to share your thoughts. There's a lot of debates here, so help us decide who is what right between me or Ben. I'll take on the Eastern Conference roster now.
So I'm actually kind of happy that you're taking the East because you have some pretty tough decisions now. I feel like you're going to answer this later on, but do you give Colin Sexton or Zach LaVine an All-Star spot? Do you give one to Julius Randle? What are your thoughts? Let's hear your take for this year's 2021 Eastern All-Stars.
It was tough, and there's a lot of different players that could have made a case for this. And so I'll go for the easy ones starting off. The first two backcourt players were Kyrie and James Harden. With Jaylen Brown and Bradley Beal on the starters, I think that those guys are the next best two backcourt players in the league. So kudos to Brooklyn Nets. I've been hating on them a lot this episode, but I'll show them some love right here. Brooklyn Nets will have 3 All-Stars this year. Good for you guys. So I have Kyrie and James Harden. For the 3 frontcourt players, I had Domantas Sabonis, who has been putting on a show this season. The Pacers are top 4 seed in the East, and a big reason is because of Sabonis and his numbers and what he's been doing on the court. So I got him. I have Jason Tatum. Him and Jaylen Brown have both been putting a great showing for the Celtics. And the third frontcourt player I have is Bam Adebayo. And the Heat haven't been playing so well as a team, but I think he's been taking some steps forward. He's been improving in certain areas of his game, and I think that he's been individually been playing really well. And the 2 wildcard players I had were Colin Sexton and Trae Young. And there were a lot of players who I was debating putting on this team. Julius Randle, like you mentioned, Zach LaVine, like you mentioned, Chris Middleton was another guy. Jeremy Grant, even though the Pistons have been awful, he's been playing really well. Nikola Vucevic, Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet also, but the Raptors have been playing so well, as well as Malcolm Brogdon. All of those guys could have been All-Stars, and you can make a case for all of them. It was extremely tough to pick this. And I was really torn between certain players. I was probably the most torn between leaving off Julius Randle and Zach LaVine. I thought maybe Julius Randle instead of Bam Adebayo, and maybe Zach LaVine over Colin Sexton. But in the end of the day, those guys prevailed. Those are my, the extra 8 guys for my, or the extra 7 guys for the reserves for the East. So what are your thoughts on that roster?
Like I mentioned when I was going over my roster, there's just so many guys that are going to get left out, and that's just is what it is. We asked on our Instagram, is Colin Sexton an All-Star this year? 88% of the people are saying yes. So hopefully, we see if he gets in. I'm a bit surprised. I think Zach LaVine might also. I think he also has a fighting shot, but it's just tough. Like you mentioned before, a lot of good players in the Eastern Conference. A lot of players moving. A lot of former All-Stars moving from the West to the East. As you mentioned, James Harden. Him coming over, he takes another spot in the East too. So that's difficult to compete with. But all in all, I don't think there's nothing too crazy with your roster too. A lot of great players getting left off. That's just part of the game. It is what it is.
Yeah, fortunately for Zach LaVine, he's a young player. There'll be many more seasons where he can get on that All-Star team. Same thing for Julius Randle. I think he's 26 years old, so he can continue to make these All-Star pushes. And just the fact that he's even in this consideration to be on All-Star, kudos to him. He's had some tremendous development since back from where he started off on the Lakers to where he is now. So kudos to you, Julius Randle. But you fell just short of my team.
But Ilan, moving forward from the All-Star, who's your All-Star of the week? Who's your player of the week, Ilan?
Well, I got to give my player of the week to one of the guys that I mentioned for the East All-Star game. It's none other than Trae Young of the Atlanta Hawks. He's put up some big numbers, had some big games. They beat the Clippers, even though the Clippers didn't have Kawhi or Paul George. Trae Young had a big game, put up 38 points. He took the Nets to overtime. The Nets are a great team. They've got those 3 stars that we mentioned. And so putting up a 20-point game, 14 assists, had also, trying everything he could to beat the Nets and, also beat the Wizards. We've spoken all about the Wizards' troubles. And, it's not that so impressive to beat the Wizards nowadays, but he still had a great game. He had a great game.
We could probably form a nice backcourt against the Wizards.
Exactly. Yeah, Washington, if you guys need some extra players to try helping you win some games or just boost morale on the bench, Ben and I would love to take a 10-day contract.
I don't want to play for Washington. I want to play against them. I want to hit a 3 against them, something like that. Give me put me on a highlight reel or something.
But yeah, Trae Young has just been dominating this week, and so not only is he just an All-Star, but he's also the Losers Ball Player of the Week for this week. And what about for the Scrub of the Week? Who do you have?
Man, this guy wants to take on an entire Golden State Warriors roster. I got to give it to Rodney McGruder, averaging 2.8 points per game. But he won all the smoke yesterday against Golden State. He wants to fight everyone. I think he should maybe switch careers. Put him in boxing or put him in MMA. He could fight Jake Paul, do us all a favor, and knock him out. But we like to see the toughness on the court. So Rodney Magruder, shout out to you. You are the scrub of the week on Losers Ball.
Listen, it takes a lot for someone who's not so good, relative to the rest of the league, to get attention of some of the top players on Golden State. Get Clay's attention, get Draymond's attention. Both of them called him out, and unfortunately, Clay said some nasty things about Magruder. Said he's going to be out of the league soon. So if that doesn't define what a scrub is, I don't know what else does.
Hey, it could happen to Clay too. You're coming back from an Achilles injury.
So kudos to Rodney Magruder for winning the Losers Ball Scrub of the Week. Kudos
you gotta get your name out there. That's how you do it. Might have to get a Rodney Magruder jersey.
If you want to come on the pod to accept the award, we'd love to have you. Well, Ben, thanks for another great episode. It's nice to hear all your thoughts on the NBA this past week, who you thought were going to be the All-Stars. For all you guys listening at home, listening on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening from, make sure to let us know who you agree with, whose starters do you agree with. Please feel free to reach out to us. Also, we want to have a mailbag episode and answer all your questions. So again, please send in all your questions about us, about the NBA. We would love to answer those.
Or just anything about basketball too, not even NBA. We ran a quiz this week too, asking us to send us your questions. All your questions. As we continue with this podcast, we're going to answer them. Keep sending them and we'll answer.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for coming on. And to our listeners in Tonga, we see you guys out there. We've noticed. So, happy buckets to all you listening, and to our Tongan listeners. I'll probably get this wrong, but Kane Fia Fia. Happy buckets.
you messed that one up. Happy Groundhog Day. We'll see you next week.